Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 264 of StandUp. I'm completely abandoning my regular format for today's episode, where I decided at the last minute to go live on Zoom with StandUp subscribers, and over 80 of you joined me. I asked some of our favorite regular guest experts to join us, including from Washington, D.C., Bill B. in D.C., I also spoke with J.L. Covan, who's a regular friend. He made us laugh and think, as always. I asked my friend, journalist David Campbell, to join us from Australia, where he is the host of their morning news program on national TV in Australia. I wanted to get an international perspective. Also spoke with anti-racist author and speaker Tim Wise, former congressional candidate Pam Keith, and veteran, founder of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans America, and host of Angry Americans podcast, Paul Reichoff, as well as heard from several listeners during our hangout last night. And that is today's episode of Stand Up. There's a whole bunch of audio that I wanted to play. There's so much that I really wanted to share with you today, but there's just no way for me to get it done. As you know, I'm a one-man band. I can't do this without your support. Welcome to all of the new subscribers, and thank you for your support. It was great to get together with you guys last night. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Consider us a subscription to the stand-up community and be a member of one of our next hangouts, as well as hang out anytime on the Discord platform. All right, no music, no, as we call it, imaging in the business, none of it. It's just a conversation with listeners and our special guests that joined us around 9 o'clock last night to talk about one of the most challenging, difficult, crazy, insane days of our life. A day that whose events I still can't process at this point. Around midnight on Wednesday night, you know what happened, and you saw what happened, and everybody has their interpretation and take on it. But it's going to take days, weeks, and years to really try to understand what the consequences of an insurrection, a sedition, a coup, which luckily failed, but what happens next, who knows? So here it is from our hangout last night, where over 80 folks showed up. It was really cool to have all of you join me on real short notice. I sent out an email, and stand-up subscribers got it and answered the call, joined us. We had a great conversation, and thanks again to everybody who joined me, our special guests. If you want to learn more about them, you can find all of the links to all of their bios in the show notes. Please consider a subscription and join us the next time. Here it is right now, starting with Bill B. in D.C. I've been talking and texting with Bill B. in D.C. Hopefully you know he's been on the show a number of times. We love Bill, and I wanted to get his take. And I got Tim Wise, who's scheduled to join me in about 5 minutes. But Bill, go ahead. What did you think of the narrative I just laid out, and where would you disagree or say that there's a different one that's more important?
Well, I actually can tell you. I mean, I know for a fact that every single Capitol policeman that could be available was on duty today. So you'll hear people say, and you'll even hear them say, oh, we didn't have enough people. They had everybody on duty. I know that because I know people that were on the Hill who work on the Hill, one of whom was barricaded in his office for 3 hours. I think you guys probably saw my post on Twitter where, I'm talking to him on the phone. He's sitting behind the barricade, and he's like, man, this is a bad time to start a dry January. He was telling me, they had a fully loaded group up there. But if you look at what you see online and you look at the things you see on Twitter, clearly their reaction to that crowd, now granted they were heavily outnumbered, but their reaction to that crowd was not nearly as violent as it would have been for other groups. And I think it's just naive to think that if Black Lives Matter or Muslims for Democracy had been trying to kick the doors in at the Capitol building, people would have been shot with rubber bullets at first and with lead bullets right after that. And it's kind of crazy. I mean, you probably was also seen on Twitter. I've been sending things on Twitter to the Washington office of the FBI and DC MPD saying, why is this cop doing a selfie with these guys? And why are they letting people in this door? And why, sending pictures of people. They failed. They failed enormously. Sund, who's the commander of
Stephen Sund.
Yeah, he's the commander of the Capitol Police. I'll be stunned if he's on the job at the end of the week because they clearly weren't ready for it. And by the way, I should point out, as you know, Pete, I was sort of predicting that something like this was going to happen all week. It was around. People were talking about it. You knew that Trump was going to give this inciting speech and he was going to tell them to go down to the Capitol building. Mm-hmm. It was obvious it was going to happen. They had no reason not to know. And yet they basically blew it completely. And almost, by the way, I mean, we came real close to either a massacre of protesters or a hostage situation with legislators today. We came really close to that. And I think the quick denouement of the situation shouldn't hide that from people.
Please don't use French. Now, a lot of people are saying what Kim just said in the chat. I've been saying it all day. Kim wrote, I'm sick of all the people feigning surprise or genuinely shocked by what happened. The last Capitol chief of police was on CNN. He infuriated me the most when he said we never could have expected anything like this to happen. I'm not a security official. I am not. I'm a comedian who sits in his shed. But I do prepare for things as a human. But if you're security, you prepare for all kinds of worst case scenarios. So that really frustrated me to hear the former Capitol chief of police and anybody else, all these reporters and everybody whose names you know on CNN, especially. I watch a lot of CNN today saying, I've never thought something like this could happen or nothing like this has ever happened before. Yeah. We know, not in America, but in other places it happened, and a lot of people have been predicting it would happen. Real quick, Bill, what do you think the possibility of impeachment or 25th Amendment in the next 14 days is?
Well, so 25th Amendment isn't just something that may be only initiated by the VP. If Congress's majority votes for it, it can happen then too. I'm not sure, though, that happens. I think the more likely scenario is that Congress, Mitch McConnell or somebody goes to Trump and says, if this continues, you're going to impeach, because impeaching him is simpler, quicker, doesn't require the cabinet to get involved at all. I do think Trump is quite close, though, to either situation. So he
lost Pence and McConnell today. I feel like that matters.
He lost McConnell last night at about 1 a.m.
Well, yeah.
When Ossoff took over. Yeah. So, I mean, I really think that Trump's managed to cross a red line for once, finally. And, my joke is it's the Reichstag Fire Festival, right? Incompetent, dangerous, and fucked up, but it really a coup. I mean, today, what you saw was an attempted slapdash, bullshit, ridiculous coup, but nevertheless, it was an attempt at a coup. And I think everyone's finally gotten over all of their partisan bullshit and have realized who we're dealing with here.
Thank you, Bill. Now joining us, renowned social justice advocate, author, anti-racist speaker, one of your all-time favorite guests, certainly one of mine. I just asked him to join us, buy his new book. He was with us to talk about this book a couple of weeks back, Dispatches from the Race War. Follow him on Twitter at Tim Jacob Wise. Tim Wise, thank you for joining me on short notice. I don't know what question to ask you, so I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to do. Tim, go ahead.
Well, listen, what we saw today was the president of the United States telling a group of terrorists that he loves them. A group of terrorists who were inside the Capitol flying a Confederate flag, a flag that this country fought to never have flying in that building or any building like it. He told a group of people who tried to overthrow the government that he loves them, which means that not only are they terrorists, but he is a terrorist leader. And the fact that he can't be prosecuted perhaps while president, well, I'm pretty sure sedition has a statute of limitations that is longer than 14 days. So the idea that he can't be held accountable, first, absolutely by impeachment and removal, so he can't run again, but then by criminal prosecution is nonsense. No more of this talk about, we have to, for the sake of healing and unity, we have to not, or he's a brain broken man baby who doesn't understand the consequences of his actions. Enough of this. The reason we're in this mess is because Reconstruction was ended in the 1870s prematurely by people who didn't want to do what they had to do to crush the Confederacy. And these are the great-great-grandchildren of their great-great-grandpappy Cooter, who wasn't taught a lesson 150 some odd years ago. So now we're having to mess with his offspring. It is time to get serious and tell all of these folks that joined this nonsense and co-signed on this attempted coup by endorsing Donald Trump's fantasy bullshit about this election. They should be denied their seat in Congress. They should be expelled if they already had it. They should be disallowed from sitting in a legislative body making laws for this country. There is constitutional authority for that, and it should be exercised, because if that doesn't happen, if these people are not held to account, this will not end. It may not end anyway, but I assure you, I just tweeted, we're sort of at that point in the crisis where the bully, having pushed you around to see what they can get away with, now just has to be socked in the fucking mouth, right? Like, that's what has to happen now, because they have to be taught a lesson to sit the hell down. This is getting out of hand. And the worst part of it, let's be real clear. It isn't just the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys are a bunch of frustrated MMA fighters who wanted to be MMA fighters until they learned that they couldn't drink and be out of shape and still get in the ring. So that's not them, right? It's a much bigger problem than the Proud Boys. The problem is you have law enforcement that is literally ushering these people into the Capitol. More cops took selfies today with these terrorists than actually arrested these terrorists. There were more cops who were helping terrorists down the steps so they wouldn't fall and hurt themselves than there were arresting them. Where was DHS? We know where they were when it was BLM and racial justice protesters. Where was the Bureau of Prisons? We know where they were when it was BLM and racial justice protesters. But for these folks, we got like 11 members of the DC police, and they're being chased up the stairs. I don't know if you saw the video.
I did.
There's one black cop being chased up the stairs by these terrorists, and he's running from them. And we know full well what happened. If these are black folks, if these are white ally, anti-racist, if these are Muslims, if these are brown folks, there's bloodshed all over the place. These guys are waving Confederate flags, literally pissing on the floor of the House, is the report that I'm hearing. And I don't know, is the curfew even being enforced in DC? Not so far as I can tell. So this is where we are. This is a systemic problem. It isn't going to go away in 14 days. But in 14 days, the guy who's the leader of this bullshit needs to be put on trial, needs to be arrested and prosecuted and put on trial for his role in it.
Do you think? Yeah.
Has anyone seen that Kelly Loeffler just got on the floor saying she was going to go there to object and then decided that she couldn't do it?
He rescinded.
Okay, thank you for that update on someone who should never be heard.
Go to hell?
Well, no, because there isn't one. I don't want that. I want her to stay here and have to go out in public. She should never be heard from again. Tim, when you look at what happened today and the way that it has been handled by the president and Republicans in Congress, that's obviously important. But we're already seeing right-wing media, who you've been watching and criticizing your entire career, blame it on Antifa. And the big question is how Antifa got all the Trump flags and went as far as doing the Trump tattoos. I felt like that was...
These are people who, I mean, many of them have identified themselves on, so they're very proud. I mean, they're over on Parler talking about this and talking about themselves having done it. This is not Antifa people who are dressing up. Antifa doesn't do cosplay as Nazis. Like it's sort of against type. It's like there are things that anti-fascists might cosplay, but like Nazis and Confederates is usually not among them. These were Trump. Trump told them to come and have a wild time. He then gets up and he and Rudy Giuliani, says we're going to have war by whatever. I don't know what the hell, whatever. They're all talking about doing exactly this kind of thing. They've been talking about it for weeks. So the idea that it's not them, that it's a busload of, and the Attorney General of Texas tweeted that out. Okay, this is a criminal who's like a week away from going to prison or something for securities fraud. Why is anybody listening to him? Why does he still have an account? This is not Antifa. This is FA. Let's be clear. This is just FA. So let's deal with that, because they are the problem. They have always been the problem. They've been the problem for at least like the last 80 years. And we ought to treat the FA now the way my grandfather treated the FA then. That's what needs to happen right now.
Can you, in the future, when you say their great-granddaddy Cooter, could you either substitute or add grandmama Cleta?
Yeah, I could. Yeah, well, I think it wasn't one of... one of Trump's attorneys was Cleta.
That's where I'm pulling it from. Cooter and Cleta. Do we have at least? Let's take one question for Tim, as opposed to last time when I said a few questions for Tim, and then 7 hours and 700 questions later. Right. I see Nathan has his hand up. I hope that's a question for Tim. Where are you, Nathan? Go ahead, find your unmute button.
Yeah. Hey, Tim. Thank you for coming on tonight. Thank you, Pete, for doing this.
I'm a hero.
Bill, glad you're doing well. Been thinking about you, actually. I got friends in D.C. too. It's just hurt me to the core to see this happening in our country tonight. Yeah. Do you not, Tim, do you not think that the people, obviously not, who are following this orange asshole, did they not realize that he's going to turn on them as well?
I think they have no conception of that at all. Look, keep in mind, I mean, Donald Trump is loved probably more by the folks on Staten Island than anywhere else. And he wouldn't live in Staten Island if his life depended on it. He doesn't even want to visit Staten Island. He doesn't even want to go back and visit Queens, right? Let alone Staten Island. So the people who love him, he shows them no love back, but he hates the people that they hate. And that is all they require of him. That is the coin of the realm, right? Is Donald Trump's hatreds are their hatreds. And so as long as he calls for law and order, which obviously is that's only a rule for black people. It's a suggestion for white people if they're white right wingers. That's all they care about. He hates who they hate. Therefore, they will put up with every level of disrespect from him. So I think they have to be treated as, yes, the cult members who they are, in the sense that we sort of feel bad for them psychologically. But, when cult members begin to do real damage to the fabric of the society, they still have to be held accountable for that. And so the cult leader needs to be held accountable, and the people that he has snookered for however long have to be held accountable, because at this point they were out there today. And even after he said, hey, you guys might want to go home in that sort of half-assed way that he did, they continued to do it. They're out there tonight. And I'm telling you, the next couple of weeks, this isn't over. I hope that state legislatures around the country are fortifying their buildings, because we already know they'll break into those. They've done that before. Right. And so if the security on Capitol Hill in D.C. isn't any better than this, I can't imagine that the security at the, state house in, I don't know, pick a state. I don't even want to say, because I don't want to encourage it. Right. But I can't imagine that the other state houses are any more secure. We better get serious about treating these people like the domestic terrorist threat that they are, rather than sort of acting like, well, we just have to sort of understand that they've been hoodwinked by this guy. Some of them have been. Some of them lined up to be hoodwinked and are part of it, but regardless, they all have to be held to account for what they've done. They're all grown ass men and women. They're capable of knowing better. And they've made a decision to try to overthrow the government of the United States of America in a way that no one else would even think they could get away with. I mean, remember, 26 years ago, a little over 25 years ago, 1 million black men approximately came to Washington, D.C. for the Million Man March. Putting aside what one might think of Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, there were no arrests. There was hardly a fight, but there were cops everywhere. And they didn't have to keep order. There was no order to keep, but because there was no disorder. You got 50,000 white folks come to D.C. this week, and they lose their shit and try to overthrow the government. And I mean, if Louis Farrakhan had said to those million black men anything remotely like what Donald Trump said to his cult today, Louis Farrakhan would still be in prison right now. And we all know that.
If these crazy ass people who stormed the Capitol today were brown or black, if they're Muslim, they would be called terrorists.
Absolutely.
By the way, Trump, I didn't see it, but didn't he say, come on, at his rally, he was like, I'll walk over there. Let's walk over there right now. Let's go, everybody. And then everybody walked over. He got in the car and he was like, let's get the fuck out of here.
Of course.
And then he went to the White House. And then the other kind of, if it wasn't so terrifying, it'd be hilarious. That first video I saw, my wife shows me. My wife's flipping out. I go inside from the shed, and she goes, "They're in the Capitol. They're in." Right. And so I see the video. She shows me, and there's people walking down a lane with sanction ropes. Okay, and they look just like any tourist who'd never been inside that beautiful rotunda would look, except they had flags. They were literally walking through. They're like. It was the worst, terrorism. They were so shocked to be there. And I was like, oh, well, I told my wife, because I'm a know-it-all, I go, well, I'm sure they went through the metal detectors. You can't get in there without going through the no, they had just walked in, Tim, with their flags, looking around.
They just walked in. That's
the only rule they followed was a velvet rope rule.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, they respected that. They respected the velvet rope rule.
All right, Tim, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Go buy Tim's book, Tim Jacob Wise, everybody. Awesome of you to stop by. I see JL Covan is here. We're expecting Paul Reichoff. But JL, what are you, Paul's supposed to join me about 9:00. What are you laughing so hard at? Good to see you, buddy.
Oh, good to see you. Hey, everybody.
Comedian extraordinaire, one of the most well-known Trump impressionist in the country. Big star gracing us
in the world,
gracing us. Best friends with huge celebrities. Huge celebrities are your fan, and yet you're here slumming it with us. Thank you.
So that's overweight celebrities, you're saying?
Oh, that's a callback to my New Year's resolution, I think.
Oh, it might be. It might be.
I want to read a tweet that I found particularly compelling today. And if anybody wants to know, I've done 7 videos today as Trump, Pence, McConnell, and Trump Jr. So if you scan my YouTube or Twitter, you'll find this. But I wanted to read a tweet I found very interesting.
Okay.
From October 16th of this year. Donald Trump should be removed from office as soon as he gets blown out in November. His spite and insecurity are the greatest threats to American safety since World War II. He is a terrorist urging violence and spreading propaganda to radicalize trash from his cave at 1600 Pennsylvania. Now, the person who tweeted that so presciently over 2 months ago was me. So I just wanted to say, good job, me.
I was positive you were about to read your own tweet. I was positive of it. I was like, for a second, I was like, he might read a Steve Schmidt tweet. But then I go, no, it's JL. He's going to definitely read his own shit. He doesn't do others' material. What is happening? What is your depiction of what is happening right now in the White House? Can you take us inside what you think? I hear from sources close to the president, legitimately, that he's losing his mind.
Sure. I think we're at a place where we're saying, because all I needed, by the way, was one website to say that the election was stolen, because in my mind, I need to validate my own greatness. So even though 950 people will say you lost, I find one guy who's living in a trash can who says that I won, and I say that guy knows the real truth, because I need that to be the truth. So right now what I'm doing is I'm going to blame Mike Pence. I'm out of people to blame, so I've got to blame Mike Pence, no matter how insane that is, because nobody's been more loyal to me than the Freddie Mercury of the evangelicals. And, very strong. And the thing about Trump at this point, though, I compared it on someone else's podcast for anybody who saw the Batman, the Tim Burton Batman from 1989. Jack Nicholson's Joker has an assistant named Bob, and the guy does everything the Joker says the whole movie. Never questions him, never deviates from the plan, always there when he needs him. Joker gets bored and frustrated with about 15 minutes left in the movie and says, "Bob, your gun." And Bob hands him his gun, and Joker shoots Bob dead just because he was frustrated. And I feel like Mike Pence is the Bob of this administration. He's done nothing but back him up like a golden retriever. And the minute Trump has no one else to blame and nowhere else to go, he just says, well, it's Pence's fault. It's pathetic. It's scary. Yeah. I hope he gets removed. I have a prison jumpsuit and a brick wall to pose
ready
as
to go.
A prison
ready
wall.
to go. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm ready to transition into felon Trump, from President Trump to felon Trump, for any cameo or video purposes. But
JL Covan, hold on a second. Yeah. If you can hang and bail me out just in case people don't show up, I want to come back to you and chime in anytime. Paul Reichoff is set to join us, former founder of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. He's got his own whole media outlet now, Righteous Media. But before him, I'm very excited to have my best friend in life and in the world, who is also a pretty big deal in his own right. He is the co-host of Australia's version, well, their Today Show. He's big there. He's also a very talented singer who I met when he was on Broadway when we were in our 20s. We talk every day. He is a member of the one of the most well-known, respected members of the media in all of Australia. So he joins us from tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, David Campbell, thank you for joining us.
And hey, buddy. Hey, everybody.
You've had JL on your show, I think.
We had JL on last year. We love JL, and would love to get him back on soon because he's such a big deal now. He's such a hoi polloi, and he hangs out Richard Marx retweets me, and he's all like, can't respond to Australia anymore. There's a whole nation here, JL, that needs you,
I have a lot of Australian fans. I'm afraid, though, I feel like what'll happen with my career is I'll book like a few dates in Australia going, I've got 500 fans in Australia, but they're in like 58 different cities. So every gig I do will have like 9 fans at it.
Yeah, but they're pretty good fans, though. They're pretty
very
good fans, the Aussie fans. They'll be like, yeah, we love you, mate. Get on and see you, Trump impersonation.
By the way, get David Campbell's Christmas album. Moving on. Let me ask you, buddy, the reaction from Dan Enda. And also your reaction to people doing Australian accents.
I'll answer the second question first. I always love it because I love anyone doing any accents. Accents are always funny if you are of the right color of the person doing the accent, which is why I always I stick with German, Russian, and South African.
And New Zealand.
Now, New Zealand is always good, eh? The reaction down under was really shocking. We were live on air from 5:30 till 10. We started doing rolling coverage from about 6:30 when the Capitol was really being stormed and overrun. I think a lot of it was shock. I think a lot of it was dismay. There was a lot of concern about what was happening in America. I think, we covered the Black Lives Matters protest, really extensively in Australia too, as that was rolling out because that was happening at the time that we were on air. And I think that a lot of us this morning felt the same way, is that the police presence was so completely different. It was like polar opposites, from the summer to now. And I think that the security level at the Capitol building was outrageous. I think that we were really scared. I mean, it was like watching, I think when Biden said this morning that, democracy is fragile. I mean, no joke. We saw how fragile it was today. I'm going to hold this up. I don't think people follow William Turton. I don't know who he is on Twitter, but he's at some hotel in DC, and I'll put it up here so people can see. This is where they all are now. They're just chilling at their hotel lobby. These are people who are at this rally today. They don't have a care in the world. 15 people have been arrested. A woman has died, and I think this is truly horrific. And I think a lot of us in America, thought in Australia, I think I said to Pete before this happened this morning, we were talking on Marco Polo. I'm like, well, you only got 14 days to go, and you had such a bumper day yesterday, and you flipped the Senate, and and hey, good on you guys. Look, I thought everything was bad. It was looking good, and then of course this morning, or for you guys, this evening happened. But you all should know, we all make light of it here because we're all part of a community here. But you should know that many, many people in Australia are really concerned. The Prime Minister here has changed the way that he is looking at things now. He tweeted earlier on that this is all very distressing. He's putting up advisory warnings for Australians who might be traveling overseas to hotspot areas, and that will include some cities now in America. So we're going to be watching this very carefully. Obviously, we're an ally, and it's a sad day. As Pete knows, I love America. I lived there. I've been going there off and on since the early 90s. So you guys have such a place in all of our hearts here, and it was really sad to see those people who've been manipulated and told something and they believed it.
I was really hoping you were going to say, we don't know what happened. We're not watching. It's so embarrassing. It's embarrassing, in my opinion, to be an American. And it kind of always has been in a lot of ways. I don't see us haven't since my early 20s, the Iraq War, the election of George W. Bush, et cetera. I've always kind of been Donna, but like today is, with everything that happened and all these, the people, the videos we saw of the actual people, and the types of people. I'm sorry to generalize, but that were there. It was so embarrassing. Like that guy sitting in Nancy Pelosi's seat, and people standing on the House floor, and a man walking through the Capitol with the Confederate flag. I kept saying to myself, "Man, I hope nobody's watching. Hope nobody else in the rest of the world is watching this, because this is horrible."
Everybody was watching. Everybody was watching, and that's the shame of it, because you guys are the beacon. You are the beacon of democracy. You are the,
we used to be. Hold on, past tense.
Yeah, it used to be past it. But that's the thing is, we still look to you. And I think that there's still hope. I think there's still hope.
I want to spin that globe.
But I don't know where we're going to spin it to, because London's locked down and it's all looking pretty grim. I just think that. You've got a lot of work ahead of you. Joe Biden has got so much work ahead of him, with COVID and now this. It is insane. But I know that they're back in certifying everything now. I don't know what's being said, but all those senators who were clapping and doing standing ovations before this happened should just sit down, certify the election, and move the hell on.
That is my best friend, David Campbell, who without, I would not be here in this shed today, because I wouldn't have done this. I couldn't do it without you. I've talked to him every day, pretty much for last year. We talk several times a day on the Marco Polo app. I love you, and I appreciate you stopping by tonight to give us the Australian perspective.
Love you too, guys. You guys stay safe, Jay. I'll speak to you soon. See everybody. I'm so sorry about your country and your democracy. It was a good time, though. Bye.
Paul Reichoff is now joining me. And
hopefully we can fix it.
Or he was. Are you there, Paul? Where did you go?
I'm here, man.
Hey, buddy.
I'm
very happy to have you joining me. Of course, Paul is the co-founder or founder and former executive director of Iraq, Afghanistan Veterans of America. And now, of course, you have to check him out. And if you haven't already, on his podcast and all things righteous media. He's on Twitter as well. And we love him. And I'm psyched to have you stopping by tonight. Say hi to Paul Reichoff, everybody. Say hi to everybody, Paul. This is our gang.
What's up, everybody? Good to see you all. There's a lot of you and a lot of amazing backgrounds to give me some positivity on this crazy-ass day. And Pete, the studio is looking especially fabulous.
The shed, everybody.
I need that Prince vibe, the Prince sauna vibe you got going on today.
Prince sauna.
Like if Prince had a sauna, maybe like early Prince, before he had a lot of money, it would look like that.
You are the host of Angry Americans, and you have had no shortage of things to talk about. And I'm always happy when you're here to talk to me. And if anybody has a question for Paul, put your hand up. But how did you see what happened today? How did you interpret what you saw? What are your reactions to a man with a Confederate flag walking through the Capitol?
Predictable, preventable, urgent. And not over yet or even close. But here's one thing I'm trying to do before I even go deeper on your answer. I'm trying to promote calm and thoughtfulness and peace, because I think that's our responsibility, no matter who we are, if you got 1 million followers or 5. And so I'm going to try this with your group. I'm going to ask everybody wherever you are, because maybe you haven't done this, maybe you do this before I get on. Let's all take a deep breath, like one big deep breath. Pete, you too. Come on, you need it.
I'm doing it.
You got to let it go too, Pete.
Oh, I'm not. Actually, I'm just keeping it in.
I'm saying that in all seriousness, because I called my mom today, and I do that a lot when shit's getting real. And when she picked up the phone, she said, yeah, you used to call me a lot from Iraq, and this feels like that. And when I was in Iraq, I used to call home when things were kind of crazy, especially because I knew that my mother saw a different perspective than I saw. And she didn't always know what was going on. So I had my mom on one phone, and then I called a good friend of mine whose brother is a Capitol Hill cop. And I just sent her a note, and she said, he cares so much about his job. I know he's honorable. He's doing the best he can. I said, I feel for him right now. I feel like leadership failed him. I'm sure there were breakdowns at the individual level, but the leadership failures were catastrophic and put a lot of people in a really bad spot. And I felt like watching some of those Capitol Hill cops, it felt like me being on the front line in Iraq. But this is real. I saw somebody ask, who could have predicted this? We've been talking about this for months on my show. We talked to a lot of national security, foreign policy experts. Malcolm Nance and I did 2 entire podcasts on it. I talked to Admiral Stavridis, 4-star admiral from the Navy. I talked to Chuck Hagel. I've talked to others. And I just finished a new interview with Chuck Hagel, former defense secretary, Vietnam vet, that will drop either late tonight or early tomorrow.
Awesome. He's one of the 10 living secretaries of defense that signed that op-ed at the Washington Post.
I booked him. I booked him in the last 24 hours because I said, look, man, I want to talk to you about this op-ed because I think it's the most urgent story in America. Even Ossoff and Warnock, it's a big story that's obviously critical. But this transcends all of that because at the end of the day, this lunatic president that I call President Mayhem has access to our nukes. Stakes don't get any higher than that. People used to say it was alarmist. They used to say we were making too much out of it. We had domestic terrorists inside the Capitol on the floor of the Capitol. I mean, this can get worse, and it can get worse quickly. And that's why I think these are the biggest stories, and they need the focus. And that was, you had Dick Cheney, Don Rumsfeld, Ash Carter, Mark Esper, who just left a couple months ago, all on one op-ed. It was kind of like, the SecDef Avengers team or like the weirdest softball team on the planet.
Well, let's not respect Dick Cheney with an Avengers or a Donald Rumsfeld.
But for some people, that's how they view him, right? Or maybe
maybe Liz. But I think
the point is, like, never in history has that happened. And these are a lot of people. I come from the military defense community. You've been so great, Pete, about covering it and following it. These are a lot of people who don't speak out at all. And if they do, it's very carefully. It's couched a lot of shit. You see Mattis put out a statement in the last couple of hours. General Dunford put out a statement. These are people who never say anything once they're gone. And they're saying it now because they're sounding the alarms. I wish they did it in July. I wish they did it, 4 years ago, but they are doing it now. And that warrants, I think, our attention above almost everything else.
Don't you think the nuclear football that he thinks is him being carried by that attaché is actually just a briefcase full of Legos?
I don't know, man. I like Legos. My kid's 5.
I know,
he just made a space shuttle yesterday. The Legos are too complicated for this guy. I don't think he could pull it off.
But the joke infers the fact that people are not going to carry out his orders. And in fact, something very...
I think that is true. And the fact that General Milley is still there, we probably won't ever know, but we'll find out in the days to come, the weeks to come, how much the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the senior military leader, stopped things or kept things in check. There's reporting tonight that the SecDef and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs advised Pelosi, Pence, I think maybe the Senate leadership on what was happening in the national security response, but they notably did not include the president.
Right, that's what I was wondering about. What the hell is that all about?
I mean, I don't know is the short answer. I'm not going to be one of those people on TV who says they're going to guess and say they know. But the fact is they didn't, or they said they didn't. And that is very significant. There's now reporting that cabinet secretaries are talking about invoking the 25th Amendment. This is what the military would do, is cut him out of conversations or try to cut him out of conversations or ignore things that he wants to do. Right. Like if he says, for example, put the National Guard in to take out voting machines. They have a duty to resist those unlawful orders. And I don't think we'll ever know how many of those they resisted. But I think we'll find out in the next couple of days about maybe a few.
Anybody want to ask veteran Paul Reichoff a question? And if there's any veterans here.
I thought there was talk of cookies, man.
I'm sorry. I keep forgetting to ask everybody. At the end of every comment, I feel like you should have to say your favorite cookie. So I'll go back to you on that, Paul.
Okay.
Favorite
now?
Cookie. Yes, go.
My favorite cookie of all time.
It's the easiest question of all time. Also,
it's not the easiest question.
Yes, it is. It's chocolate chip. Next question.
No, it's almost as hard as the question I ask, which is waffles or pancakes. It divides my listeners all the time. Here's what I brought because I'm prepping for the long term. I'm trying to eat healthy, so I got these like Kodiak protein cookies. And I also got whiskey because it's been a long fucking day.
A little tiny bell jar.
I keep these in the garage because I told my mom, and I'm saying this to you all. Look, strap in, people. This is not a one-day thing. This could be a new normal. We all need to try to keep the peace and stay calm, but don't overlook it. Don't normalize it. This is very real. This is very serious. but it also may not be fleeting. This is a lot like we've seen in other countries. And if you know your history, this ain't going to be over.
I've got Pam Keith scheduled to join us in a couple of minutes here. Former congressional hopeful Pam Keith is going to join us. But Nick D, a question for Paul Reichoff. Nick D. Fabrizio, everybody. Another guy who I wouldn't be here without.
What's up, Nick?
I've always known that it's great to live in a country ruled by laws, but that only works to the extent the guys that have the Kalashnikovs are agreeable to it, right? And it's worried me for many, many years that there's a connection between the military and police forces and the right wing to some degree, more than I think makes me comfortable. Where is that now? I mean, is that something we can deal with and stop? Because I'm very concerned. You said this is not over, and I agree with that. I mean, every morning I know there's people target practicing in the rural fields around me where I live, and I don't know why they're target practicing, but I don't think they're doing it because they believe in democracy. And I'm worried about, the amount of guns that are in the hands of the right wing now are pretty intense. And I'm worried about the connection that so many of them have military training, and that police forces, particularly in rural areas, have been not inundated, but they have people from these right-wing militias.
Yeah,
so what do you think about that connection, and how do we break that connection going forward?
I think it's one of the most important issues to explore, Nick, in this entire country right now, which is the politicization of our military, right? And I've written about it, talked about it. For folks who don't know, I'm a political independent. So I'm approaching this in a different way. I'm unaffiliated, like I think a lot of people coming out of the national defense and military community are, and maybe just a growing percentage of Americans. I think it's the most troubling part of what Trump has done. He was smart about one thing. It's that vets, cops, firefighters are popular, right? It's kind of the best populism, right? And he wrapped himself in the flag, but he also wrapped himself in the military and in the cops and in first responders, and hijacked it in many ways. But every time he needed a populist move, he would go back to veterans, he would go back to the military, he would go back to cops. And if you say it enough times, people are going to believe it's true. He says, I love our cops. I love our firefighters. I love our military.
He doesn't love anybody or anything.
Right. But a lot of people in those communities believe him because they hear it all the time. So I think you're cutting at something that we got to pull apart in the next couple of days. I have faith in the institutions and the leadership, but that doesn't mean you can't peel some people away. Right. Yeah. I mean, you'll hear this like there were inevitably Trump supporters who work on Capitol Hill cops. Who are Capitol Hill cops, right? Maybe they saw somebody they know and they just let him in and they didn't pat him down. Maybe it was more extensive than that, right? Most coups are pretty extensive in their coordination. The FBI is ripping through it right now. Plenty of other intelligence agencies are going down all those spider webs right now. But it's safe to assume anytime there's a coordinated attack, which I think this was a domestic terror attack, there were helpers in different places. We'll find out over time where they were. But overall, I have faith in the institutions, and the professional military will hold the line. That doesn't mean you can't peel some people off and they can't be dangerous. But I'm looking to Milley as maybe one of the most important people in America right now. And it's also important, the message that these 10 secretaries of defense sent. I asked Hagel about this. He said we were talking to the troops and we were talking to the public. He wants, a sergeant in the Middle East or a petty officer on a ship somewhere who maybe is only hearing Trump on TV because Fox News plays. He wants them to hear that the SecDefs from both parties are deeply concerned and the military should be off limits and shouldn't be involved in elections. So I think that was a really underreported part of this. That's who they're talking to. They want people to know what the truth is because it's hard to get the truth to everybody, to include our military right now.
Paul Reichoff, host of Angry Americans, Righteous Media. Follow him on Twitter. Paul, if you want to hang out and chime in, if you got to go, I really appreciate you stopping by right now. Thank you. Everybody, put your hands together for Paul. Our sound is off, but he can see you. He can see you.
Thank you. And thank you to Pete. I got to tell you guys, Pete's, I give him a lot of shit, but he's a true patriot in the best sense of the word. And he's been a big supporter of a lot of great causes, but especially veterans. And I'm grateful for that. And he always has our back, and especially when times are tough. And thank you guys for supporting him in this new move. It's really an important one, and your support makes it possible. And as a guy who's coming to you live from his garage myself, I can kind of move around a little bit.
You got to get a shed. Got to get a shed.
I mean, every little bit happens.
I love you, buddy. I thank you. That's very kind of you to say. Thank you so much for stopping by on short notice,
Thank you all. Stay vigilant out there and stay frosty. Keep breathing, people.
All right.
Go Williams.
Go Amherst. Be Williams.
Oh, JL getting a punch in. Well done, sir. Now joining us, former congressional candidate for Florida's 18th district. She is also a former JAG officer in the Navy, Air Force, Navy. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Pam Keith, PamKeithFL.com. We love Pam. Pam's got some very exciting new things that she's doing, including a lot of activism. She's going to launch her own programs in the next couple of days. We'll have lots to talk about. But Pam, I invited you here tonight because I always want to talk to you about pretty much, well, everything, including hair care, which is weird. Yeah. But your reaction to today, did you see it coming? And how do you see what we witnessed today in America?
I think it was inevitable. Because there's only two ways to go. You either have peaceful transitions of power or you have violence. That's it. Those are the only two ways. And so if you say, I reject the peaceful transition of power, then your expectation has to be that the alternative will take place, which is violence. Now, I think in the minds of some members that were out there in sedition land, they were thinking, well, if we just refuse to accept this, then they'll have to accept that Donald Trump stays in the presidency. But that's not how it works. And it never has. So I don't know. I think they were thinking that this was performance art where they could just kind of vent their spleen and they could just say, well, I stood up for what I believed in, and they could use it as a talking point in an ad or on a fundraising letter. But it's not like they were unaware of the gathering of guys with guns on the Capitol steps. It's like, the thing that I find absolutely necessary to reject every time we come across it is the idea that Republicans do not know who their minions are. Yes, they do. They absolutely do. They know exactly who those guys are. They know exactly who the Proud Boys are. They know who the Aryan Nation are. They know where their guns are. They know how well armed they are. They know where they organize. They know that they can be deployed at a drop of a dime. They are just like Sinn Féin could not, legitimately disavow the NRA, right? Like at the end of or the IRA, Irish Republican Guard, whatever, what I mean.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you know your people, then you know what they're capable of, and you know what your dog whistles are, and you know that they're listening to them. So I'm not going to let you hide behind plausible deniability. Everybody in America knew they were gathering on the steps of the Capitol today. Everybody. I'm in Florida right now. I just drove back from Georgia. We knew they were going up there. People in Georgia were telling me, I'm going up to Washington to do what precisely? I mean, it's one thing to say, we know they're going to gather to protest, but we know these guys. They don't protest without their guns. They don't protest peacefully. They're big, boasting, big mouths on social media. They're constantly talking about how they're going to engage in violence. How do you pretend like you don't know the intentions of guys who are constantly talking about how they're going to engage in violence to get their way?
Right.
So I'm sorry. As far as I'm concerned, every member who said, I reject the election results was engaging in stochastic terrorism. They were inciting guys that they knew would go off, and they went off. All of this was predictable. All of this was foreseen. Like the one component that was not foreseen was the degree to which the Capitol Police was going to be complicit and open the barriers and take pics and selfies with them and egg them on. Like that, I did not see coming. Maybe I should have, color me naive, but I really thought the chain of command and the call to duty would hold a little bit stronger than it did. And of course, there were Capitol Police and there were people who did conduct themselves valiantly today. So I don't want to say it was everybody. It was not everybody.
Well, let me just throw this at you first, and then maybe Bill or Paul could jump in here, or anybody else that knows anything about law enforcement or the different layers and jurisdictions, Pam. But you first. A lot of people were sharing and have obviously been making the comparison about how law enforcement has treated Black Lives Matter and leftist protests over the last however many years, forever, but especially most recently. And what we've seen them knocking heads from New York to Portland and doing all kinds of snatching people off the street. Horrible, horrible shit. The worst kind of shit. But that's because those orders come from the federal government, from the president to the Department of Homeland Security and those other agencies' heads. When everybody was sharing this picture today with all the stormtroopers at the Lincoln Memorial prior to what was that? I forget the chronology of when that picture happened, but it was prior, I think, to the big Black Lives Matter protest down there. And that picture, I think probably most people saw it. They were there already. They'd been ordered to be there and to be ready. Today, that didn't happen. That order has to come from the top down. It has to come from DHS, has to come from some federal agencies, and they didn't get that order to prepare today. So, Pam, you first, and then I want to go to Bill and Paul.
I don't think that's true. I think Muriel Bowser did tell them to get ready. And I think
that's the mayor of D.C., right?
Right. And I also think that because she had made public announcements in D.C. about the fact that they were going to be deploying National Guard and all this other stuff. And there were convoys of armored vehicles or whatever that went to the staging center at the convention center and were prepared. Something happened in translation where they just weren't there.
Well, hold on a second, though, because I want to ask Bill, because, yes, while the mayor of D.C., who I think is a black woman, right? She, it'd be weird to see her saying, calling the cops off the Trumpers here, but I have no idea. We'll ask Bill here. But the point is, she's not in charge, which is why a lot of people are saying make D.C. a state so that we could have jurisdiction over, in this case, the National Guard. Right. Bill, you're in D.C., you know these things.
Yeah. So actually, the Capitol Police report to Mitch McConnell. Right. They report to the head of the Senate. They're not a federal agency. They're actually part of the legislative branch. So they are totally separate, and they do, though, cooperate. I mean, it's a drinking game of mine in D.C. to see who can name the most police jurisdictions in the city, because there are literally 75 or 80 of them. But the Capitol Police also liaise with Park Police, with Uniform Secret Service, and with the D.C. MPD. Well, my understanding is that in this case, Muriel Bowser, who does a great job, and D.C. police are actually quite good, offered and were not taken up on adding a bunch of security right on the spot during the day. So they were staged elsewhere in the city. They also had an expectation that the proper rioting was going to happen later. But I think that the key thing here is that the Capitol Police report up the chain to at least.
I think Bill's cutting out. Maybe it's just me.
No, it's
going to be less aggressive. They're going to be less aggressive with right-wing protesters, I think, in that case. Just the reality.
Pete, I don't think can we not be dishonest with ourselves? Let's talk about the reality of our politics. Black Lives Matter was in reaction to police brutality, and the response to Black Lives Matter was basically saying, we support police brutality, which is just another way of saying, we support you guys doing whatever the Sam Hill you think you need to do your job, because we love you guys. So if there is an allegiance issue here, it is that the police allege with those guys because they feel like those guys have their back, because they feel personally attacked when they're held responsible for killing people, because they feel like, oh, well, you don't live my life. You haven't walked my beat. You don't know what I face on the job. Ergo, how can you judge whether it's right or not to shoot somebody in their bed? How can you judge whether it's okay to stick a knee on somebody's neck and have them suffocate? Surely you just don't get how complicated my job is. Well, there's a whole band of folks out there that are like, stand with the blue, and the blues stand back with them. And that is a leadership failure. Don't tell me that's individual cops, because the leaders know who their guys are too. They know who their guys are. They know what the chat is in their room. They know that it's online. They know their guys are talking about standing with these crazies and these racists, and they don't want to root that out. They don't want to. Why? Because it undermines morale, and they have to deal with the union, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why they don't deal with it. They just kind of pretend like it's not going to happen. Well, today it showed up its ugly face, because when they needed to do their job and stand in defense of the Capitol of the United States of America, they let a bunch of seditionist terrorists in the front door taking selfies. You tell me that that's okay. I don't think so.
Good God.
Can I jump in, Pete?
An amazing lineup of human beings. Paul?
So I think here's the core issue. Leadership matters. And the president's the commander-in-chief, is responsible for protecting the homeland and ensuring our national security. If the president doesn't identify something as a threat and the Secretary of Defense, who is a political operative essentially for the president, doesn't identify it as a threat, then it's not viewed as a threat, right? Like there is a world where the SecDef can put down the 82nd Airborne and ask for the National Guard and the police, and we can have helicopters overhead. I mean, I've been to inauguration. Some folks here have been to inauguration. You've been inside the Capitol. You can dial it up or you can dial it down. And I think we will see over the course of the next couple of days that they were probably deliberate choices to downplay the threat. For me, it was an obvious threat. I think that we're going to see a lot of failures. You're also going to see a lot of successes. There were also a bunch of pipe bombs that were dismantled. Okay. We don't know how many other car bombs, pipe bombs, other people are in handcuffs somewhere right now. So look, it's a miracle that they didn't take a member of Congress hostage, that only one person is dead, that nothing blew up. If you look at the sheer number of people that went through those doors, something's watching over us today, and it's not just incompetence, okay? We are very lucky that a lot of people aren't dead right now. And it's not just luck. We're also good, okay? There are some people who dealt with threats that we don't know about yet. We'll hear about them in the days to come. So, yeah, we're lucky, but a lot of things must have worked at this point. And there were some instances where there's a training component here. Sometimes they do not want to escalate, right? But why don't you take that guy down? Because they look around sometimes and like there's 50 of them and there's one of me. And there are tactical reasons why they do certain things. It doesn't mean they open a gate and let everybody through. But when you see it through the microscope without understanding the larger strategic environment and what their directives are, we needed a comprehensive plan. We didn't have one. We don't have one for COVID. We don't have one for Afghanistan. We didn't have one for protecting the Capitol under an immediate threat. And that's the president's fault, but there were other failures along the way.
Yeah, all well said, especially about leadership. But Pam and everybody else, I mean, to me, what I was filled with rage when I saw these people inside the Capitol, period. Right. Because of COVID, as you're not allowed to, as a tourist, it's a great place to experience the Capitol. Pam, you tried to get a job there and unfortunately came up short, but I'm guessing your opponent who did win is one of the 140.
Oh, yes, he is. Proudly going out there and telling them why it's a grand idea to reject election results.
So to see them in the Capitol is, guys, to see people who all need to be arrested right now. They're trespassing. Every one of them is trespassing. It's easy to arrest them, and nobody was arrested. They were taking selfies with them.
You know how many out as if they were just badly misbehaved on a school.
They were taking pictures with them.
Do you know how many times I've been in the Capitol with a group of vets who were stopped because they have shrapnel in their body?
Right.
Okay. Or because they have prosthetic limbs.
Legs. Exactly.
Okay.
Hey, guys,
that is a regular routine. So there was some serious fuck ups, breakdowns that allowed this, but there was also a command climate that supported it. Right. And this, they've been downplaying all this shit.
Get in here, Bill.
And one other thing it's happening. It's going to happen more. It's happening now in Utah, in Washington State. And then if they can't hit hard targets like state capitals, they'll go down the list. Your local DMV might be a spot where Johnny Crazy Pants decides to go down with his pickup truck. They're going to go for symbolic targets as well. So I'm telling everybody, don't be scared, but be vigilant and be thoughtful about the fact that this ain't over. This is a wave, and maybe it's just getting started, or maybe it's cresting tonight.
Sure. Guys, one thing that I will point out, and it infuriated the shit out of me to watch these people being helped down the steps and let out. But one thing you have to understand about today in particular, and I was hearing this from people on the Hill, they saw the number one mission, McConnell, Pelosi. So the number one mission tonight was not arresting people. It was getting them out so that they could check the building and make sure the building was safe, and then get to the debate in order to finalize the tally of Biden's electoral votes. That was the number one thing they cared about, because what they're looking at is, what does Trump do next if that doesn't happen, if it waits until tomorrow and then Trump tries to do something else. So I get why it's so incredibly frustrating.
Important. It's really important. That part of the mission accomplished. Nobody got
that was the number one thing that they were
Nobody got captured. Nobody got snatched. Right. Like, that was hard to get all those people out of there safely. That was very difficult. And that's an important point. Like, that was their priority. They don't care if the building gets taken. They care if people get taken.
Yeah, go ahead, Pam.
Can I just make a little national security comment here? Like, We have no idea who those guys were. And I have a reason to believe that some of them, maybe a whole bunch of them, were Russian assets that got let into the U.S. Capitol building, into offices of people like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Excuse me if I have a problem with that. We don't know what kind of devices they had on them. We don't know where they left, if they left bugs all over the place. How the hell do we know? I mean, granted, they sweep for security, but does that mean that they've picked up every sophisticated listening device? I don't think so. Anyway, my point is, you don't ever let people into the Capitol like that for any damn reason, period, ever, period. So that's true. I will concede Bill's excellent point that they did have other mission critical things to get done, right? But they were off-site somewhere. Well, according to what I saw on Twitter, everybody was safe, and they were meeting and convening somewhere. So I'm not sure that they had to be in that building, but I do concede the point that there are other mission critical things. And I also think that there is a third component here. We don't want martyrs to the cause. I think people, there's a reason why we don't have a body for Osama bin Laden. We don't want martyrs to the cause. I don't think anybody wanted blood in the Capitol. Right? I don't think anybody wanted that. And I think they were thinking a little bit about that as a component. Like, they don't want anybody martyred and, as a rallying point.
But there was blood. There was blood in the Capitol.
Yeah, there was, but it wasn't. I'm talking like members of Congress, like whatever, somebody that could say, oh, I just got, randomly shot. I mean, I think the person who was shot was not.
It wasn't a high value target. I mean, every high value target in the U.S. government was in one place, right? Yeah. Like that is a terrorist dream to have them all there. And like, we're going to find out over days to come, but that is something. I mean, even accidentally, you can just grab a member of Congress on the way to the bathroom.
Exactly. And how do we know? I mean, if I were a terrorist from any external entity and I wanted to infiltrate the United States and get myself carte blanche into the operations of the government, why wouldn't I join?
Well, I'll tell you why. The only thing that makes me feel a little bit more secure about it is I would imagine ISIS and Al Qaeda were terrified of those people today.
The hell are you talking about? They probably were amongst them.
I'm joking, Pam.
Again, they're not particularly picky about their membership. Have you seen their guys?
Yeah, that guy sitting in Nancy Pelosi's chair. He'll never leave my brain.
Right, these are the guys that washed out of basic. Like, I'm sorry, but no. I'm sorry, no. What happened was a disgrace and an embarrassment. It made America look like the Keystone Cops, and it is unbelievable to me that our allies all over the world are now thinking to themselves, we deferred them?
Exactly. Yeah.
What are you talking about? They can't even keep their own Capitol building safe. How are they going to keep the world safe? What are you talking about? The mighty American military brought down by a bunch of incels who couldn't make it through basic. Are you kidding me? This is what happened on our watch. I cannot believe it.
Hey, y'all, I got to go eat cookies, but thank you for having me, Pete.
Thank you very much, Paul. Appreciate it very much. Paul Reichoff, host of Angry Americans.
Everybody, peace.
Go support Paul. Subscribe to his podcast. And I want to get some questions, Pam, everybody else, that if you can hang out, if you'd like to, I'd love to have you stay here. But Frank, are you there, Frank? There's Frank. Hey, buddy, I've been meaning to reach out to you because Frank has been on the ground like you have been, Pam, in Georgia, doing everything he can to help these two Democrats get elected. Are you there, Frank?
I'm there. And, yeah. And shout out to flipping the Senate. Like, that was a great accomplishment. And it's sad because it's been overshadowed by this nonsense. But that was a fantastic accomplishment way back in November when the Senate seats were up and people were looking at where Senate seats could be taken to hopefully flip the Senate. Georgia was kind of an afterthought, and now it's overtime, and Senate is flipped. Georgia stayed blue. So shout out to everybody on the ground here in Georgia. Shout out to all the canvassers and the field directors and the volunteers and everything. It was an amazing effort. If you were down here, you saw how important this race was on both sides, the effort put in, the billboards. There was a lot of money down here, a lot of money. But without the efforts of the people, that doesn't happen. And it's a shame that so many people that contributed to such a great victory won't get the credit because these crazies are once again acting up.
Well, let's not let anybody take it from them, and let's give you and Pam and everybody else who did anything, credit for that. And on behalf of everybody listening, thank you guys. It was, in fact, an amazing, amazing moment. And it will, along with what we saw today, carry through, and it will matter. But Frank, did you want to further the conversation here about what we saw today, or ask a question, or what's up?
Well, it's the same thing I always say. This goes back to Trump. At what point we're talking about threats to the country and et cetera, et cetera. He's the biggest threat to the country. Yeah. Let's go back to the Russian leak. Hack. We still haven't talked about that. And, all respect to Paul, but he's like, in the next few days, we'll find out. Will we? Will we? So often we don't find out. All they deal in is misdirection and lies and secrecy and cover-ups. And so we won't necessarily know how complicit they are. We still, let's be honest, the whole Russian stuff, we still don't have closure to that. This man is dangerous. He has always been a danger to the country. Now he's lost, and he's an even bigger danger to the country than he's ever been before. And now we're seeing it on international level and domestic levels and levels that America hasn't ever seen before. And so all of this other talk, I understand it, and it's all connected, but this is the big flashing red light. And at what point do we say, no, this guy is it? He's the bad guy. He's Voldemort. He's Darth Vader, except without the intelligence. He's more reckless and dangerous and scary. And so at a certain point, none of this stuff is going to get addressed. None of this stuff is going to get stopped until we stop the big bleeding cancer that's causing all of it, which is Trump. And electing him out obviously was not enough, because he's still breaking the Constitution, breaking up democracy as a loser in that. It's ridiculous. Sorry.
I have to respectfully disagree with my brother Frank here. By the way, tip of the hat to you, sir. I was knocking doors in Savannah. I just got back tonight. So yes, huge win. And I do want to talk about that a little bit later, but I want to disagree with you. See, the problem here is that we Democrats deferred too much to this notion that the election was going to save us. Therefore, we are now absolved of all responsibility of holding people accountable and using the power that we have, right? It's like playing football in a way, right? There were a lot of junctures where we could have taken a stand. We could have said, you know what, we're not funding the government until this, and this is done, because this is no bueno, right? And every turn we were told, oh, this would impact the election. This would impact Georgia. This would impact the swing states. We need to make sure we get the election. And so basically what happened was the Democrats, and I love my Democrats. I am a Democrat. I'm not hating on Democrats. But we basically decided that we were going to play defense on 1st and inches, rather than play defense on the 30-yard line or the 50-yard line or the 20-yard line, right? Like, we were going to play it on 1st and inches, and that defense was going to be the vote of the people, knowing that Russia infiltrated our elections, right? And knowing that, and we were believing that should we win the election, that would be it. That would be fine. But at that point, you don't know if you have trained the other side to get its way, no matter what, no matter how crazy, no matter how insane. By that point, you've given 4 years of data to the other side that they could count on you not doing anything. And that is how we got where we got. We got to 1st and inches on the goal line. And the people held. The people held.
Let me.
But the Republicans were like, well, we can continue to wild out, because what are the Democrats going to do? They never do anything. Let's just go do whatever the hell we want. And that's why we are where we are. It is not Trump. It is everybody who enabled Trump and everybody who was unwilling to check them.
I'm not sure if you guys necessarily disagree there. I think there's more nuance somewhere in between, but it's fine if you do. But Frank, you want to jump back in there and get a final word? And I want to go to anybody else who wants to say anything tonight, and then wrap this up and throw it in for tomorrow's podcast. So happy to have you here, Pam, and we'll get a final word from you. But and I don't know who else did I ask to join us. I'm looking to see. I'm doing 4 different jobs.
You got right somebody now there on the bottom. A lady. I don't see her. Melody.
Yes.
Well, hold on, Frank. Let me just ask Frank. Did you want to say anything else? Sorry, buddy.
No, I'll keep it brief. We do agree at the same time. There's a lot of daylight in that, but I still do think that the orbit around him, because while there's the Democrats are at fault, his supporters are at fault. A lot of this stuff had been in the works before, from the Tea Party. When you're talking about Sarah Palin, we've seen that movement really trying to force their way in. But I think he was the activation piece that really or the accelerant that's really set this blaze of fire. And I think that his recklessness, the danger that he represents, combined with all these other facets, is what has exploded this to the point where people are now storming the White House. That's my thing. People are now going into the White House. Without him, that doesn't happen. And now we still have what? I mean, the Capitol. I'm sorry, the Capitol building, which is even scarier.
He would never let his supporters.
He would never let that happen. Exactly.
No, he would never let his supporters in. He fucking hates those people.
Yeah, and that's the worst part, is that he's so inauthentic that they don't even care about that, because he's become this cult-like figure. The cult-like, politics is a cult of personality in a lot of degrees,
Oh, it's everything.
Reagan, Clinton, Obama, all of that. But the way that he's been able to capture this zeitgeist of hate and violence and just negativity across the globe, like even when you see the videos that he has and the propaganda that he puts forth, he is uniquely dangerous. So I do agree with Pam, and I don't think that he's the say-all, end-all of this, but just the unique ability of him to incite this is such a danger that with the days we have remaining, he shouldn't be able to stay in office.
I agree.
And he may not. Let me get another word from Bill in D.C. who wants to add maybe a little bit more detail. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I would only disagree in the sense that I don't think you should give Trump all that much credit. I think that the great man theory is a bad way to look at it, because Trump 10 years ago never could have gotten anywhere. 20 years ago, he couldn't have gotten anywhere. 10 years from now, he probably wouldn't. He just happens to be the malicious, malignant tumor that is the right politician for the moment we're in. His sort of being famous for being famous kind of guy. He's dumb and he makes bad decisions and he doesn't know what he's doing. And yet he sort of stumbled into electoral success, at least for one cycle. Frankly, a lot like a guy named Adolf Hitler, who was not very good either, but managed to stumble into things, get lucky for a while. And I know, but it's just true.
Sir.
So I would just say that we shouldn't give this guy a lot of credit. He is an idiot and a bigot and a fool who happened to fit the zeitgeist at the moment. And the zeitgeist is about, I think, to chew him up and spit him out to prison. So.
All right, that is where I chose to end the podcast from last night's video, and I may post the whole thing for subscribers. But I got a little unruly, some audio issues, a lot of people talking over each other, and I want to just end it there for you for today's episode of Stand Up. Of course, we'll get back to the regular format tomorrow and the coming days. The next 2 weeks are going to be absolutely crazy, so stay close, stay connected. Don't forget, obviously, there's a horrific virus and pandemic going on, because that seemed to, I think, be put in, if you didn't have a loved one that was sick, in the rearview mirror because of the insurrection happening today. But I'll get back at the regular format, and thank you for your support. If you are not a paid subscriber, please consider signing up. Lots of new people listening. I really appreciate your support. Go to the paid subscription link in the show notes. And I'll see you on Discord, where a lot of people are still chatting right now as I'm wrapping this up from the earlier Zoom. We always have an after party on the Discord platform. You can learn more about that if you're a subscriber as well. All right, folks, hang in there. Thank you so much for listening and for being a part of this community of listeners. Talk to you tomorrow. Love you.